Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'm going to be going over the MDI Cup 4, the meta for dungeons, a little bit of PvE, but we will stick mostly to dungeons. This is going to be a new thing I'm doing after all the MDIs and all the AWCs. This is my first one on the MDI. I just did one for the AWC. So I hope this evolves and gets better as it goes on, but hoping to do like a little segment on this after each weekend that there's a esports tournament going on, because I watch all of them and I enjoy them a lot. So I figured, why not talk about it? So this past cup, we had Echo win it from the losers bracket. They actually did get knocked down early, and they came back and won. They had a replacement healer in their team, not replacement class necessarily, just a replacement player. I guess he was getting, I believe his name is Jeeth, and he was getting a lot of crap, I guess, online. Obviously, my advice is not to read that, but he ended up playing really well, and they ended up winning despite having a replacement person that didn't have all the practice necessarily that the other guy did. So that's pretty cool. PI Me was the team that probably should have won this one. They were definitely in position to, and then they kind of just fell apart and played like crap down the end. I don't know if they choked or whatever. If you talk about choking in sports a lot. When the cup was on the line, they did not play their best. I'll put it that way. When they played very well earlier on, and they might have actually deserved to win overall. We also had a nice little tiebreaker at the end between Golden Guardians and Does Gargoyle Stream, which Gargoyle won. Gargoyle, that's hard to say. Gargoyle won that tiebreaker there at the end, just to put in positioning and stuff like that. So basically, first thing I want to talk about is kind of like the meta, though, of what's going on right now. So for tank, we still have Demon Hunters. We did see a little bit of change in Covenant choices. So some Demon Hunters are just playing Necrolord now, and they say that that's better. It's more offensive, I guess, where and helps your team more. Whereas the Kyrian one is still like a very, very good Covenant to use, but they were just, a lot of them were just preferring the new Necrolord, the way they reworked it. So we did see that, but we're only seeing Demon Hunter there as tank. That still hasn't changed. We're still seeing some Priestess healer, but it's been a lot of Paladin healing now, mostly because of the damage that they put out with Ashen Hollow, Venthyr Paladin, Holy Paladin. So we are seeing that. We did get a glimpse of Resto Druid. That was only from Golden Guardians. J. the healer, running Resto Druid. And he played fine with it. I think there's less of a difference between healer than maybe what meets the eye. The Holy Paladin damage is irrefutable. So for any damage check boss, like the first boss in Mist, it's obvious. But for non-damage check stuff, I think it's a little bit closer than maybe what it appears. There's always going to be a fire mage, and then the last spots are either between, monk, hunter, death knight, boomkin. Those are pretty much the main four, and not much difference there from previous weeks, but the mage, of course, is the mainstay. I complain about mage a lot in my AWC one. I'll probably complain a little bit about it in this one just because of how static that is. So what we're seeing here is a lot of range comps still. That's always going to be. I mean, storming literally only affects melee, so you can kind of just get rid of that effects by playing mostly range comps. And so that makes that pretty easy. So you're seeing a lot of range comps, but you still have a melee in there a lot, whether that's a monk or a DK. The DK has the good AoE, good trash damage to pair up with the mage. So you're either seeing a DK for the trash damage, or you're seeing a boomkin come in for the single target convokes for the bosses essentially. And that's kind of the difference you're seeing there. It's also worth mentioning with the Holy Paladin, you're also seeing Shadow Priest. I didn't mention Shadow Priest because I mentioned Priest, but I didn't specify that there's also Shadow Priest as well, usually running Night Fae. So there's a little bit of variance, but we don't see any Warlocks. We don't see any random melee like Warrior or Rat. We did still see a Rogue for Necrotic Wake, although they nerfed that interaction there, so you're not seeing that so much. But all this comes to say is, I think I've highlighted before in videos that I think it's good to have a wide range of things that are playable. I don't think it's healthy for the game that there's only one tank that's viable to run this with. Having now played DH tank a little bit, I understand why it's so powerful. Every single button on a DH tank feels rewarding, feels like it's doing something, whether that's just doing damage for your group, whether it's healing yourself, whether it's, everything feels rewarding as a Demon Hunter. You have mobility, you have everything. You have Shadow Meld, if you're a Night Elf, which you would be if you were in the MDI. So you have all these things going for you, and it's just hyper powerful. And I think we need to see something like a way to. The one example that came to my mind was Prop Paladin. We have a really strong heal for ourselves, but that heal only heals ourselves. It doesn't do damage to an enemy. It doesn't buff an ally. It just only heals ourselves. So we're using a global to only heal ourselves. Now that is a button you wouldn't even want to press on MDI unless it was an emergency, of course, because it'd be a wasted button. And so Demon Hunters don't really have that, because when they're healing themselves, they're also putting out damage. And that's a huge, 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 huge difference. And that's kind of why it's a lot broken. Now, Blood DKs do technically do damage with Death Strike, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. I've tanked Death Knight a little bit too, and it's just not the same. Demon Hunters are definitely super strong right now, and especially for this kind of setting where you're running speed runs. I did want to talk about mages as well. Mages are too powerful. They're in every single group. You have to have a mage because you have to have combust because it's always up. It's uncapped AoE. And I'm sick of them being so powerful all the time. It's absolutely bonkers why it's allowed for mages to be so powerful. Everybody else, it seems like they have something that's going good for them, so they get nerfed. But mages get to continue just being this hyper strong thing. And if you're a mage, I'm sorry. I'm not saying to nerf you to the ground. I don't even care if you're still like the best range or the best whatever. Just to be the best at everything is just a little bit over the top in a game that's like supposed to be balanced and stuff. Like, well, they're supposed to actively trying to balance it at least. To be best at like everything is ridiculous. Ring of Frost still really good for MDI, just like it is in PvP. You still have your ice block, still have Cauterize, still have Alter Time to do skips and stuff like that, or like do pulls and skip back to your group. So many things you can do with a mage. So much utility, so much damage, so much. The uncapped AoE. Just get rid of the uncapped AoE, and I'd be happy. Or give everyone uncapped AoE, I guess. But I actually like the capped AoE. I just don't like that it, for some reason, doesn't count for everybody. That's a little bit silly. The Hunter is a little bit more rare, but what the Hunter provides is a little bit of utility. This is what I like to see, right? So the Hunter have the Hunter Trap, they have Feign Death, which there's a lot of good reasons to leave combat for different mechanics and stuff like that in dungeons. So you have Feign Death, you have the Shadow Meld option, playing Night Elf. You have all these utility options for, they sell the Camouflage as well, which gives them a little bit of uniqueness as far as getting behind enemy lines to then throw a ranged trap. So hunters have a lot of utility, so we see them occasionally. Monks you mostly see because they do have good sustained damage, but you mostly see monks for their touch of death for certain scenarios. So again, very good utility. So if you want other classes represented, essentially what you're going to need to do is give every class a utility that's so useful that there's some dungeon that they're useful for, right? Like there's some interaction that they're useful for. And the angels on the end of Spires of Ascension, for example, it's worth noting how important a monk can be there, because multiple teams messed it up with letting the angels heal. But when you have that monk and you just save your touch of death for it, that actually, I mean, it guarantees you that you're not going to have two angels heal, which we saw happen pretty much no matter what. But so at the very most you would have one, but even then you would in theory want to save it for that last one and then touch a death and be done with it, right? That would be probably the actual goal there. So monk is so useful and stuff like that. Priest is just really good because of PI, power infusion, very powerful cooldown, and then Boomkin powerful because of Convoke for single target. So we see that a lot of utility with Boomkins as well. So basically, you have the static mage. You have a static priest in most groups, not every group. It's either shadow or dis. And then you have a static demon hunter. Then you have a few spots being filled by a couple different options. So whether it's a holy paladin, shadow priest, or and then like a monk or whatever your other DPS is to fill in with a hunter, to fill in with the mage, shadow priest in that scenario. So basically, as I've talked about this before, I just want to see more representation. Maybe you can only play per round, like per round. Maybe you could only play like one certain. You can only play. You have to choose a tank, and then it's banned. Then you can't use that tank for the next dungeon, right? So kind of maybe more like a banning type thing. Not like League of Legends, but just in a way like, so if your first match you were very static comp, Death Knight, Holy Paladin, Mage, Boomkin, Shadow Priest. Let's say that was your first round. Then those 5 specs would be banned for playing in the second game of that round. So now, if you whether you won and got to play again or lost and went to the loser bracket and played again, you could then play it again in another one. So you could save that your best comp for your second match, maybe. If you, just in case you lose the first one, you could save it for your third one technically if you got to a third one. But maybe something like that would just give more class representation. I think there are other classes that could be good in Mythic Dungeons. I think DPS Demon Hunters are sneaky good, kind of along the lines of how monks are. They don't have the touch of death, but they have a lot of other good things that they can do. And they do really good sustained damage, and some of their AoE is uncapped. Not all of it, but some of it is. So I think that's a good option in there. I think Warlock is really good for like Tyrannical, and we don't see any Warlocks. Warlock DPS during Heroism is off the charts. Bloodlust, whatever. It's just absolutely off the charts. So I think Warlocks are something you could see come in for Tyrannical. In theory, like that kind of makes sense there. But maybe their trash DPS isn't as good for an MDI setting at least. And so maybe that just needs to be looked at, and you could get them in there. But I think there's a way. I think a lot of classes are kind of close enough right now, and just a few tweaks need made. So that's always my goal: get more class representation. I think it's more fun to watch. The least fun I have is when I just watch mirrors of each other face each other 3 times. That is so unfun for me as a viewer to watch just mirrors, and then they face best out of 3. One wins one wins the next, and then the third game, I'm just checked out by then. I don't even want to watch it anymore. It's just the same thing. And the split screen is pointless because they're just doing the same things. It's the difference that the different classes bring just gives you a difference, right? When you're watching a NBA game, you don't want to watch, your team play your team. You want to watch your team play a different team with different skill sets and different things they bring to the table. And I feel the same way about the MDI. So that's my thoughts on it right now. Like I said, I plan on doing these after each one. Hopefully, again, they evolve into more of a regimented segment type thing where I'm not just kind of drifting around trying to find my footing. As always, I do ask you to subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.